what does the Toledo workforce have to do with that success?
Well, look, I've been public on my, call it adulation for the Toledo workforce. I mean, these guys, yeah, I mean, what they've done to help FCA in the last 6 years is, you know, these are people that I haven't even asked them, and they've offered, you know, which is that it tells you a lot about the way in which labor relations have changed in this country. I mean, over the last 6 years. These people are people that haven't, you know, haven't taken summer vacations and canceled them and moved around and worked through Christmas to provide cars. You know, the Wrangler has got an unfulfilled demand of, on the pessimistic side is 20,000, I'd say probably about 50,000 globally that we can't produce every year just because we're short. And so the investment in Toledo is designed to free up the capacity so we can do them without flooding the market. We need to keep that car in tight supply. So, but we need to find other ways to try and cover the market with that car. We're short in terms of global market coverage, so we need to take it around the world. I've said very clearly that the bookends of this brand, the Wrangler being one, and whatever the upper end ends up being, and it may be the Grand Wagoneer or the Wagoneer, that these things need to be as American as apple pie, and they can never be moved out. So.
Mr. Marchionne, Alex Brockman, CBC Windsor. Moving to Canada for a second.
Sure.
Earlier, with funding for the Windsor Assembly plant, you had referred to it as a political football and decided to fund that yourself.
And I continue to be of that view. It was a very awkward attempt at helping.
And
I mean, if you're on a surgery table and that's the kind of offer that they give you, you should probably decline and perform self-surgery, and you feel much better.
And staying on that, and you had called Canada a guppy in the auto industry. What does Ontario and maybe even specifically Windsor need to do?
Where do you come from, Windsor?
From Windsor.
I studied that. I'm a Canadian. Anyway, go on.
What can we do from your perspective to ensure that additional funding comes into Ontario and into Windsor?
Look, the question, it's a very simple issue, and I've said this back then and I repeat it now. The only standard that's going to govern investment in Ontario and Canada in general on the automotive side is the competitiveness of the environment. And so that takes a variety of forms. It has to do with the exchange rates, which Canada has become really good at. I think this morning I checked the rate, it was trading about 70.5 cents, 70.5 cents a US dollar, which it brings back fond memories when we were trading in the 60s. But so, that's helpful. I think, the question about labor rates, and we're walking into a labor contract renewal this year, is going to be important. But there's nothing wrong with the workforce. The workforce is capable, and I think we've seen a phenomenal response from the Windsor people on launching the new minivan and continuing to produce, the current vehicles, notwithstanding some issues that have arisen in, the changeover, the shutdown, and so on. So there's nothing wrong with the workforce. The environment appears to be all right. I just don't want to, I don't want any money of size. I think there are some things that are owed because they're sort of part of the normal investment attraction sort of routine that most governments go through. But it's not substantial. It certainly would not drastically change the investment profile. But, there are alternatives. I mean, producing in the U.S. is an alternative. Producing down in Mexico is an alternative. We got to make sure that we continue to be competitive. That's that simple.
As a follow-up question, there's been some discussion about maybe seeing a Chrysler crossover vehicle built in Windsor. Can you comment on that at all?
No. There's been a lot of discussion. I don't have anything to announce because we haven't made a decision. I know Kaniskas wants one, but.
Move over here.
By the way, I can stay longer than the half hour that they threatened you with. If you want me here, I can leave. I have actually other things to do, like have a coffee and stuff.
I think I've been preempted, Mr. Marchionne. I was going to ask about the second vehicle there.
Or the third.
Well, what's the succession plan? Because the Dodge Journey is just about at the end of its life. You have a platform.
Wrong platform to do the Journey.
Is it?
Okay. From my standpoint, it is, because I think that the next generation Journey is a completely different car. Okay. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't be making a car that will fill that space, but the parallel with the Journey is the wrong one.
Well, so that question's been asked. I'll ask you one other that seems to be kind of the big interest question. Why did you pick the name Pacifica?
I gather from the way you asked the question, that you don't like the choice. Yeah. Look, there's a reason why we have brand heads. And I'll take full ownership for anything that goes wrong, and I'll give the credit to anybody who gets it right. And so if it doesn't work, it's my fault. Let's just agree that. But he asked, he looked, well, there was actually a combination of evil intents. On the one side, Reed Bignan wanted to continue to sell the old Town and Country for a period of time while the new one launched. And so we've prolonged the life of both the Town and Country and the Dodge version. Caravan. And on the other side, he wanted to really break the association with sort of the soccer moms, because this car is so phenomenally different than the previous one that he wanted to break the connection. And I think the use of Pacifica, which I think, at least on the inside of FCA, has got, based on our evaluation, has got good market vibes. It was in market for 5 years. I've been reminded of that this morning, but it wasn't out there long enough to do damage to the brand, and I think it's still remembered. And people who drove one liked it. And so we're just going back and reaccessing that memory, but there's no other magic in this.
Mr. Marchionne, Michelle Molesky from CTV Windsor, back here, straight back there.
Hello.
Hello. It wasn't that long ago here at the auto show when us Canadian media asked you about the next-gen minivan, and you said I said we would rebuild the minivan. I didn't say it would be in Windsor, and it created a flurry of fear in Windsor that we might lose that product.
I think we're the biggest. I think we're the biggest automotive employer in the city of Windsor.
Absolutely. So how did you get from feeling that way to today and bringing the product to Windsor? And now that you've done it, how do you feel about how everything went between how you felt then and how it's going today?
Well, I feel very badly about having spent more than $2 billion having built that plant. So whenever I spend that kind of money, I get into sort of apoplectic sort of conditions. But it's spent, so I can't put it back. It's like putting milk back in the bottle. The money is out. I feel incredibly good about the way in which the workforce has reacted to the challenge. It is one of the best plants that we run globally, and they've done a tremendous job of running both the old vehicles and working on this new car. So in hindsight, it was a wise decision. I think the comments that I made, and they remain true as they were then, about alternative production sites that FCA has on a global scale to try and reallocate cars. That continues to be an available alternative to all of us as we decide to allocate products going forward. I think the thing that I found encouraging, and which I think has been incredibly helpful to us, is the attitude of the workforce. And certainly, and I'm not trying to be critical of sort of the government intervention. What I did not like on the Canadian side is the fact, as somebody mentioned earlier, is that we ended up being food for political debate, and at a point in time which we really were not looking for that kind of attention. And it was unwarranted, because at the end of the day, we ended up getting nothing, right? And so people have run their elections, have lost their elections, and the only guys that came out of this with some mud on their shoes were us, and we had done absolutely nothing. So I try and stay away from politicians now as much as I can. Broadly speaking, that's not just a Canadian comment, it's generally.
Laura Emerson from NBC 24 in Toledo. Can you confirm that that Wrangler pickup will be built in Toledo?
Yes.
It will. Okay, wonderful. My other question is, in addition to lower gas prices, what else is responsible for the magic of Jeep sales?
Jeep. And it's that simple. But, you know, I travel the world, and because I'm fundamentally homeless, a lot of jurisdictions in the world refer to SUVs as Jeeps. It's become synonymous with SUVs. A lot of people don't even understand what the term SUV is. Everything is a Jeep. So we've defined the segment. and people are recognizing that there is incredibly valuable DNA in the brand. And so we just need to make sure we don't do anything to screw up that DNA. It's at the heart of the success of FCA. We can't underestimate the value of Jeep within our fold and what it says about the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marchionne. I'm Pim Fox from Bloomberg. You've set an ambitious goal for FCA, debt reduction
Yeah.
by 2018, 50% increase in deliveries, plus
Forget about the deliveries.
Okay.
Let's talk about financial numbers. I said
all
that.
right, tripling net income.
That's it.
Okay. Describe what FCA looks like for Sergio Marchionne in 2018.
It looks like a much better kitchen than the one that I inherited. Clean, no debts, and making money. And then whoever comes in after me in 19 or later, if he wants to screw up the kitchen, it's his nickel. But certainly you can't blame me for having left them an untidy environment. Look, one of these things about there have been times in the last 12 years that I've been running this business that when one could claim that it was the right time to hand it over. I mean, in 2004, for those of you who have short memories, I was losing $5 million a day at Fiat then, before Chrysler. And so we cleaned all that stuff up. We made the highest level of operating profit in our history in 2008, in 109 years of history. And one could claim that, that was it. You've cleaned it up, give it to somebody else. And then the bankers ended up screwing over the world, and we ended up in the worst financial crisis that anybody can remember. And so I somehow stayed on, and then I came to Chrysler. And Chrysler, in the year in which I showed up, I think it was in March of 2009, lost $1 billion in a month. So I ended up picking up this other thing and saying, now we got to fix this one. And so you get to a point where you can spend the rest of your life just fixing things. And if Fiat is fixed, Chrysler is fixed, there's going to be a point in time in which you need to stop fixing. And the important thing is to leave this thing in the healthiest possible states that you can leave it in, to allow the next leadership class to take it. And it's, the obligation my obligation is twofold between now and sometime in 19, when I get out, is to leave the house in the best possible shape that I can find it and to find my successor. It's in the fold, right? I'm grooming the turkey. And, thank God we have more than one turkey that we can choose from. And I made the comment to the press before about the fact that there's, the training exercise that people go through here is not for everybody, because the washing machine rocks pretty hard, and you got to be able to go through the wash cycle. And a lot of these people have got handle multiple functions. They're forced to undertake international assignments. This is a big place. We're going to sell nearly 5 million cars. We're going to get over 5 million by 2018, whatever that number is. And we're running 4 operating regions, which have got completely different attributes. And if you look at our competitors, and you exclude for a moment the premium makers, premium brands, I don't know of another automaker that makes money across the globe in all regions. So we all sit here, and out of Detroit, we sort of pat ourselves in the back about the fact that North American margins are healthy, and then you look at what they do in Latin America, what they do in Europe, and there's not been a lot of success. So it's, running a car business requires to fire on all cylinders across a much wider array of challenges than just doing well selling pickup trucks and SUVs in the North American market. You got to be able to skate in a variety of ponds. And so the objective here is to groom a guy that understands that objective, and it doesn't end up being so regionally focused that he forgets what the mandate is. The mandate is to be a global CEO. It's not to be sort of Detroit darling, which is a good thing to be, but you got to be a Detroit darling, and you got to be a Chinese darling, and a